are back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Elite Duels podcast. I'm your host, Mark, aka Frushi, and today's podcast we'll be discussing the story of Stewie2k and a parent's perspective on kids playing video games, particularly training for eSports. So today I'm glad to have my father on the show, Tony, to get his perspective on how he thinks eSports is going, kids, and what he thinks is a healthy amount of video gaming and gaming. As mentioned previously, today's show is sponsored by Elite Duels, bringing the fun and excitement of fantasy sports to esports. Play for free to win real cash, draft your favorite players, and watch them earn you fantasy points. Use code DUELS when you deposit $5 or more and receive $5 free. As mentioned, today's show, we will be discussing the story and history of Stewie2k in light of the recent accomplishment of him being the first North American player to earn $1 million. His story is unique, and he didn't receive any support from his family, most notably his parents. That being said, let's begin. So Jake Yip, a.k.a. Stewie2k, was born January 7th, 1998. He's currently 21 years old and is an American professional Counter-Strike global offensive player. He currently plays for Team Liquid, and he is widely regarded as one of the best players in North America, despite having only played CS since the summer of 2014. Growing up, his parents spent most of their time overseas, and he was raised by his aunt. Unfortunately, his aunt was diagnosed with cancer. She did survive, but this did put a lot of stress on Stewie. He would see his mom once per month, his father during major holidays, so really didn't see his father that much. Due to being the youngest child, he also found himself playing a lot of video games and started playing CSGO in the summer of 2014 when he was 16 years old. I'm 11 years older than my brother who's actually on the show from time to time. And I actually wasn't really around for much of his childhood because I was out playing hockey, junior A, etc., going to school. Tony, did you ever notice him playing excess amount of video games? And what were your thoughts on him if he was playing too much?
I've never really noticed him playing too much, although I would say I'm different from other parents. I don't see the evils in overplaying video games. Certainly, I do like to see a balance for my children in terms of physical activity as well. But I'd rather see them doing that, trying to exceed at something and trying to better themselves than to be sitting around as a couch potato watching TV or out hanging around the corners and things like that. So I've never really had a problem with it. I know where they are. They're somewhere safe. They're at home. They're playing. They're engaged, they're enjoying themselves, they're learning. I see a lot of skills being developed by playing games, both from a strategic and thinking perspective and also from physical attributes in terms of hand-eye coordination and so on.
Yeah, interesting. One of the things with video games that I've noticed, and this is a little bit different in terms of esports and those traditional games, but in terms of sports games, what I notice is that a lot of kids growing up today become more intelligent and become more in tune with what's going on in terms of sports, and they have a better idea of like what each player's capabilities are if they're playing specific sports games. So I'll use soccer, or I'll use NFL or Madden for an example. A lot of people play Madden. Between that and FIFA, they're one of the two more popular sports games, and because they're playing these games, they're more in tune with the players, how good the players are. They know what the players' positions are, rather than cheering for specific teams. Or I find them more cheering for different players. So they are becoming, I feel like, a little bit more intelligent in terms of sports. And I think what we're seeing is a little bit of an advantage to a lot of the sports markets, because they are keeping the younger crowd engaged by playing these video games. If video games weren't introduced to these kids in terms of playing professional sports and playing video games, I don't think professional sports would have an increased amount of viewers, especially with the young ones coming up today. I don't really think they have much interest in watching sports if it wasn't for the video games itself. Like Nick, that's really all he played was sports games growing up, and he could tell you probably the majority of every single pro sport, like all the major pro sports between soccer, football, hockey, and basketball. Probably not so much baseball because he didn't play it, but those four, he didn't specifically spend a lot of time playing those video games, and he could literally tell you every single player in the league, who's doing what, how good they are, who should you be playing, who they shouldn't be playing, etc. But he doesn't even watch. He literally just plays these games, doesn't really watch the games. He might listen to podcasts here and there, but doesn't watch them. But he knows everything about it, and I feel like that's a trend that a lot of younger kids are going towards in terms of sports.
Well, absolutely. I actually see kids Nick's age actually digesting sports a lot differently than we did. You know, when we grew up, we watched the team. We went for a team. We probably watched them play and maybe watch some other games, but we wouldn't watch all the games. We wouldn't follow the players necessarily. Today, I find it's more from a statistics point of view, and they track every single player. They know their statistics. They're digesting an enormous amount of data, which to me, I look at it from a father's perspective and say, wow, he's learning. He's exercising his brain. His ability to digest and understand information is quantum leaps above where I would have been at his age. We just weren't digesting that much data. And so it's really interesting because I see this as a life skill for him in the future. His ability to work with large amounts of data, and certainly professions are changing, specifically looking at large amounts of data, being able to analyze them. And I think the ability to do that while enjoying yourself is preparing you for the future in whatever profession you might be in. But certainly it's highly likely kids today are going to be more in information-based professions than physical labor or kind of trade skills.
Yeah, it actually makes sense too, because since we're preparing, we're in the information age now, but there's a lot of stress in terms of what the future is going to bring for manufacturing jobs and robots and AI taking over a lot of manual labor positions. But I think, like you said, because of what children are doing nowadays, and they're constantly using their brains and thinking and taking and digesting so much information, we're kind of already starting that succession planning to prepare kids now to go into the proper professions, because there's not going to be, it's a lot of speculation right now, but the trend is right now a lot of those jobs are being taken away, manufacturing jobs and manual labor jobs, and being replaced by being automated. So it is kind of interesting that we look at that perspective. But anyways, we'll get back to the Stewie2k story. So when he started playing Counter-Strike, and we know this as gamers, you typically have really long nights, right? You're up 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and then you're sleeping all day, not waking up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I know I've done that a couple times when I was a lot younger and playing video games. It's very easy to get lost in time, and typically you don't have that time until it's late at night. So because of this, Stewie, again, he was 16 years old. He was playing ESCA, which is a kind of like where you would go to test your skills. It's a paid service, so $7 a month, and they have their own dedicated servers. It's really good if you're looking to play like top end Counter-Strike. You're not looking to play on the matchmaking servers that Counter-Strike currently has. And unfortunately, because of this, he started missing a lot of school because he was sleeping in. And here's a specific quote from Stewie himself. When I started playing CSGO, school started going downhill for me, and I was never a fan of school either. CSGO was like a drug to me. The more I played, the more I got addicted. The more I got addicted, the more I avoided school. I think this quote hits home a little bit in terms of how much I played Counter-Strike when I first started playing. And this was probably between the ages of 12 and 14 years old when I was first introduced to Counter-Strike. And this is when we actually had to play on a CD. It wasn't downloadable content or anything like that, or you could stream it. It does hit home. At that time when I first started playing, it was just casually. And then as I got better and continue to play, you kind of build like an internal network by meeting people online and playing with fellow Counter-Strike players. And then you get introduced to these leagues. And one of the leagues I was introduced to was the Cyber Athletic League. It was called CAL back then. And I had the opportunity to play CAL I, which was the highest league that you could play in, with a group out of Vancouver. I actually couldn't tell you because, again, it was 15 years ago, 16 years ago that this happened. I was 13 or 14 at the time, and I can't remember how I got recruited, but I remember having to spend quite a bit of time, not even playing games, but practicing. Like we had to go through strategies. Like we spent probably hour to 2 hours a night just on each specific map, and focus on strategies, and then talking about what the other teams like to do, etc. So his quote does hit home a little bit. What was your thought when I was going through that stage and playing quite a bit amount of Counter-Strike, and probably at that time I would be considered a little bit addicted to the game?
Again, from a father's perspective, I really didn't see it as an issue. I did see it in that you were pursuing two passions in your life, one being high-level competition of ice hockey, so actual physical sport, and you had taken up this particular sport, I guess it's called today.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be called that back then. It was a game back then, but it's a sport today. And I didn't really see a problem. I didn't see, certainly I was monitoring as a father in terms of your grades and your ability to continue pursuing hockey. Your mother had a different idea, though.
Going back, I don't believe my mother really had an issue with me playing the game or spending time on the game. I think her major issue, and maybe it's different, you guys have the conversations, I didn't. I think she just didn't like the fact that it was a shooting game. So you're shooting each other, because I know she really disliked guns, and there were never ever guns in the house. Like we couldn't have cap guns, anything like that. I was never allowed to get like Grand Theft Auto games, any type of game that had some sort of shooting and killing somebody. I always felt that was the issue. Maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure.
I think it was a combination of both. I mean, it stems back to when you were just a little guy, and I think I had bought you a machine gun or something like that, because when we were growing up as little boys, that's what we played with, actual fake machine guns. And I bought you one, and I think you pointed it at your mother and said, bang, you're dead.
Yeah.
She didn't like that. It's different for boys because we grew up doing that. It was just a game. That's what we played. We ran around the neighborhood shooting each other, playing army and so on.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it was that. But another big part was that you were absent during a lot of the family get-togethers. You would be in a match in your room, and we would want to have supper, and you wouldn't come down because you were in the middle of a match. And I think that's what bothered her much more so than the shooting. That's at least my understanding of it, yeah.
I get back then, too, when you look at it, it wasn't like it is today. Esports has become more mainstream. The guys are making, very good livings and doing it. Back then, it was literally in its infancy. So, especially for Counter-Strike, because Counter-Strike had just started. That was at 1.5. The Cyber Athletic League was only around for like 1 or 2 years prior to me playing. And there were no crazy grand prizes at that point. I think maybe the biggest grand prize was like $50,000, something like that. So the grassroots were still being laid out. The foundation was still being built in terms of building esports and having a profession. So I can't really blame her for being like, what's the point, right? Because you don't really hear of anything such as professional gamers. There was no streaming back then, so even if I was one of the best Counter-Strike players, I couldn't really show my skills off to the world and sit there and stream like the opportunities that kids and adolescents have these days to show off some of their skills. So at this point now, Stewie, his grades were actually so bad, the school began calling his parents, and his mother had to actually come home to start forcing him to school. And his parents at this point did not support his playing at all, and they didn't understand the potential career he could have had, or he could have as a professional. So 2016 esports had grown quite a bit from when I had started playing from 2003 2004. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because his parents just weren't around. Like, you can't really... I see both sides of the story here, but at the same time, like, if you want your child to succeed in school, and he's only 16 years old, he's in high school, maybe you should be around a little bit more than being overseas and keeping him with his aunt. And at that point, you're really putting the trust on a 16-year-old kid to force him to go to school. Like, at 16 years old, I have an understanding. It was almost like you have to go to school. I could never miss. But if I started playing video games, I have no family around, literally just an aunt, and I don't like school at all, it'd be very easy to start skipping. Like, I don't know what you see, but as a parent myself now, I kind of look at the parents and say, if you shouldn't really get upset. You can be upset at your child, but at the same time, you should probably be there for them. You can't put all the blame on the kid.
Well, I certainly think it's the parents' responsibility to teach and help a child understand, particularly at that age, that school is an important aspect of their life. Even if they want to pursue this career, they have to find a balance in their life. It was no different than your hockey. I didn't expect you to spend all your time playing hockey. I don't even call it a backup plan, because so some people call it, well, it's a backup plan. Because I'm all for my children pursuing their passions in life. I think that's a really important thing. You never want to say woulda, shoulda, coulda when you turn 40 years old at your midlife crisis. But on the other hand, the odds of making any of those are very low. It's not something that I would discourage a child from doing, but certainly try to encourage them to balance between school and the game. And also, it's a parent's responsibility to teach them. It's important. Even what you learn in school is going to help you with your future career, if it happens to be in eSports.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, his mother had come home, and actually they took his PC away, so he couldn't play anymore. And he had actually grown the ranks in Counter-Strike. He was starting to work his way up, and he was actually starting to play with other professional players. So it wasn't like, because again, in 2016, you have the ability to rank players. They can see your skill levels, and based off of your skill levels, you get matched up with other good players. So he was working his way up the ranks on ESEA and started playing what they call Rank S, which is where all the professionals are playing in. So he wanted to play for one of the best teams in North America. He always looked at Cloud9, but he was still relatively unknown. Cloud9 is Cloud9 is actually statistically, in terms of revenue, the largest North American esport organization. So he had his eyes always on them. But at that point, North American Counter-Strike was not the best. They didn't really have the best players. And those, again, they were struggling to compete with a lot of the European nations in Counter-Strike and some of the South American, so particularly Brazil. So he actually reached out to the Cloud9 manager to try and get noticed, knowing that he would have to spend even more time practicing to get to the best that he could be. This is another quote from Stewie himself. "When I played in 10-man online games until it ended, I couldn't even wake up for school. I would skip school, say I'm sick. It became a consistent thing, and of course my grades went down. Eventually the dean told me that I need to start coming to school or else I'd have to transfer. So instead, he made the decision to transfer himself and didn't even tell his parents." Another quote from him: "My dad never gets angry, but when he does, it gets crazy. The rage is unbelievable. He scolded me, telling me that I need to be successful or else my future will look really dull. He lectured me about how I'm making a terrible decision in life, but as much as I wanted to explain to him, I knew he wouldn't understand. He never saw the streams that I was playing on. He never saw the free travels that these players had, or the amount of people that were going to watch them in stadiums and live competitions." Again, so even as mainstream as we see esports and Counter-Strike and today, it's still relatively unknown to normal people how big and how large it's gotten, and how you could have not just somewhat of a career, but extremely successful career and a very long-term career in terms of you don't really get injured. There's no, when I look at that, that's one thing. And when I'm thinking about my son, what sports I'm going to put him into, now when I look at esports, even if it's just for some skill development, I don't have to worry about him getting concussions, getting hit in the head, breaking his arm, right? Maybe he gets a sore thumb from clicking a button or something like that, but that's it. It's kind of unique when you look at the kind of profession and longevity you could have as a professional.
This is the biggest eye opener for me. I consider myself pretty tech savvy, and I'm up with the times. But until really you and Nick explained to me what the sport was doing, or how it had become a sport, a professional sport, I had no idea. So here I am now preaching to others in my, we'll call them the gray hairs.
Yeah.
But it's not even gray hairs now. It's I don't know what the right number is. Over 35, probably may or may not know. It starts to taper off.
Yeah.
In terms of knowledge,
I think I think it would be the gray hairs, to be honest. Maybe people in their early mid 40s, late 40s. It depends how old their children are, right? So I think they have an understanding. If they have kids that are between the ages of, like, say 6 and 15, they'll understand because they're most likely on YouTube or on Twitch, and they're going to be watching a lot of these professionals play, and then they're explaining, hey, Dad, or hey, Mom, look at this tournament. This guy just won $3 million. This guy just won $1 million. Or this guy has 50,000 people watching him right now playing this game. So I think, like you said, it's going to be the gray hairs who don't have the kids in that age group, or the younger 35 to 40s that never played video games growing up, and they'll have children that are of age that are capable of playing video games. So, yeah, it's kind of that. And for Stewie, it would be that. Like, that's what his parents would be.
His parents would have been mid-30s probably by the time he was there, mid-30s to 40s.
He's 16 now. He's the youngest kid. I'm not sure what the age gap is between his siblings, but I know when he was 16, both of his siblings were away at college. So maybe his parents, I would assume, are probably in their mid to late 40s, maybe early 50s.
Probably. I would say certainly in their 40s, and certainly people that I talk to about esports, now that I understand it, are looking at me with dismay.
Yeah,
what?
3 heads.
People are paying, you're filling Wembley Stadium to watch an esport, and so it's a real eye opener. I think it's the biggest kept secret from the older generations, and so it's hard as a parent if you don't understand it. How do you parent your child for it? We understand sports. We know that if our child is exceeding at hockey or football, that there's a potential career for them. We don't in esports, and I still think today probably most parents still don't at that age group.
Yeah, it just needs more time. That's all it is. Time and more big events where they get onto mainstream media for people to see it. I think the Fortnite World Cup in New York City was probably the first big eye opener for a lot of these kids, the parents, because not only did he win, he won $3 million. They filled out what was it, Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York. But not only that, but the winner was invited to go on Jimmy Fallon. He was on The Social, like a lot of big late night and other mainstream media news outlets. So I think that was a good step in the right direction for esports to start beginning to grow mainstream. But again, it's already so big. Like when you look at some of the metrics and some of the numbers, they're doing better numbers than most of the major sports. Like they'll have more people watching a Counter-Strike or a League of Legends finals than an NHL finals or an NBA finals.
And that's most impressive when you think about it's a very narrow demographic that's watching it. So it's a high percentage of a small demographic.
It's very narrow, and it's in its infancy. Like it literally being mainstream right now, it's only been around for 3 to 4 years where people are starting to understand its growth potential, right? Sports, in terms of hockey, basketball, football, have been around for, football 50, 60 years. Basketball and hockey, I think they're over 100 years, right? So, and they're still looking to grow their markets and tap into untapped markets, looking at overseas and China. But when you look at esports, it's a global market already. They already have that. It's not hard to distribute esports. That's the thing.
I would say from my understanding, it's more global than any other sport.
Yeah. I think the only other, when you look at traditional sports that people would understand is probably fighting, like boxing, MMA, because it's kind of something that everyone understands. Everyone understands fighting. But other sports, like, say, American football, if you're trying to grow that in Asia or even in Europe, it could be very confusing. You're going to have to understand the rules. What does this mean? What does that mean? Fighting is just fighting. You get it. These two guys are going to fight. These two women are going to fight, and so be it. Similar with esports. I think that's probably one thing where they're going to need help is the explanation of different games and the strategies. But so many people play and have an understanding already. I think they're not interested or focused on that yet. I think their main ideas right now, when I'm talking about the developers and the leagues, is how do we consistently provide a better viewing experience right now for our current viewers and audience. And until their growth tapers off and they feel that they're saturated in terms of their growth and users and viewers, I don't think they'll really necessarily focus on trying to engage more people to just start watching, like your average Joe to just start watching. I'm not sure. That's my take on it.
Well, I would think what's going to happen over time, your demographic is going to age, and so you're naturally going to increase your demographic range just over time. Mm-hmm. So over the next decade, now you're people in their 40s have grown up with it, and you have a wider demographic because the younger children coming in are going to add to that demographic.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'll be able to bring in my demographic, quite frankly, because they didn't play the sport. They don't understand it.
Yeah, probably not. So going back to Stewie's story, he continued to stay in constant communication with the manager at Cloud9, and in 2016, he actually got a phone call from the Cloud9 manager offering him a 3-month contract. However, he was only 17 at the time, and he would have needed his parents to sign off on the contract. So he had to wait until he was 18 because he knew there was no way his parents were going to sign off on him playing. So on his 18th birthday, right after midnight, in fact, he signed the contract, moved immediately into the Cloud9 gaming house, and didn't even tell his parents. Out of curiosity, how would you feel if that's something that myself, Nick, or even Cassandra would have done? Just see you later, I'm gone, I've signed this contract, and bye.
Well, I can understand from a parent's point of view. I don't want to demonize his parents because obviously they has best interest at stake. They thought they were doing the right thing for him, or they just would have let him go if they didn't really care. They cared. Doesn't mean just because they care they're making the right decisions for him. If my child had left without telling me, that would be my failure, because it's not their, I should understand what their passion is. I should understand, you know what, Dad, I'm doing this anyway. So you're either with me or not with me, but I'm doing it anyway. And as a parent, I think you want to be there to support your child. Kind of goes back to when I was a kid in a rock band on the road, and my father said, "You're going to school, and you're not going on the road with a band." And I did, because back then that's what we did. Was it right or wrong? He was making what was the best decision with the information that he had. I certainly would have gone back to school even after I went on the road. So for me, I took that experience and applied it to you and Cassandra and Nick, and I said, you know what, pursue your passion, but understand education's important, even when pursuing your passion. And I think I don't know, you tell me. It was an experiment from my perspective, from what I learned growing up and having passions I wanted to pursue, that I never wanted you to have to look back and say, gee, I wonder what would have happened if I would have pursued this.
I think, looking at it now, regardless of what you do or how you're a parent, or regardless of just your career path in general of your history, you're always going to look back and look at what could have been, or what could have, the whole shoulda, coulda, woulda thing, right? Regardless of hockey, right? I had every opportunity to advance my hockey career, but you always look back and like, oh, what if I didn't have this injury? Or what if instead of going and signing with this team, I signed with a different team? So I still pursued my passion, but you always look back on things that you could have changed and would have changed. But one of the things that I think limits in terms of looking back at the history is the regret, right? So you can always look back and say, I wish I would have done that, or I should have done this, but at least I had the opportunity. The worst thing that could have been is I have had that opportunity, say, go play junior A, but wasn't allowed to, and I had to stay home. That probably would have, you'd look back and say, oh, that sucks. I didn't get to have that opportunity or pursue that opportunity. And I think one of the main things here, and you touched upon it earlier, is that it's got to be a healthy balance, right? Like what we saw here, this is an extreme case and probably an outlier in terms of Stewie, in the sense that he literally dedicated all of his time to Counter-Strike to the point where he wasn't going to school anymore. That's not good. I would never advise that. What you need is a healthy medium between both, right? If that's something that you want to pursue, just like if you're pursuing to be some sort of athlete right now, you can't just always focus on that. You got to focus on both, because you always have to have a contingency plan. What if something doesn't happen? What if this doesn't pan out? School is always there, right? School is always there. You're always going to have the ability to use your brain, hopefully to some capacity, or some sort of labor job. In terms of being a professional athlete, and I would say when I say professional athlete, I include eSports in that, it's still very rare. So the fact that Stewie, he spent a lot of time, and you could, say that him spending so much time and dedicating so much time to playing Counter-Strike definitely was probably one of the advantages he had against other 16-year-olds at the time, and that's why he may have gone on and signed with Cloud9. at what would have been 18 now. At the same time, if he wasn't that good of a player and was still dedicating that much time and was failing at school, then he has essentially 2 failures. Or he's got to go back and take more time at school, and he's going to graduate a little bit later in life. So again, what I would like to reiterate is those who are considering becoming a professional esport or just pursuing some sort of athletic profession, you need to also think about the future. Because even with professional esports, you can't play forever. At some point, your skills are going to diminish. Someone's going to be better. Someone's going to be younger, and they're going to go and acquire a new asset who is potentially younger, better than you. And at some point, your career is going to be done. And most of the time, it's mid to late 30s. In professional athletics and in esports. Esports, we tend to see that even younger. Like once you hit 30 to 33, you're seeing a lot of these guys retire because it is strenuous on the body. You're constantly traveling. So what are you going to do after it? Not everyone can be an analyst. Not everyone can get a job commentating. So you have to either have made sure that you've put enough money away, you've invested it, or you've have a backup plan and get your degree as you're still going. You know, we see the guys from Astralis, Magisk, and Device. They've literally been, for the last 2 years, that team's been the best in the world, and they both got their degrees as they were playing professionally. So you don't have to go to the extreme and quit everything and just go to that. Yeah, a lot of people are going to say that. Make sure you dedicate yourself, but I think you still have to have that healthy balance between whatever you're doing, schooling, nutrition is very important, and your hobby, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. We talked about this. I mean, you can take that from any other sport. You have a short career in sports. You're done when you're in your 30s. What do you do with the rest of your life? Yeah, maybe you've made enough money not to have to do anything. Maybe the top guys do.
Yeah.
But a high percentage will have a professional career and still have to do something. But also, even if you have enough money, what are you going to do? Sit around all day? You want to do something that is productive in your life, that you also have a passion for. You're only going to learn that by kind of broadening your horizons and going to school. I think, looking at other sports, people who had university degrees and then became professional athletes did much better in life afterward. And that's something I think you got to look at. It's not just this is my only career. It's not going to be your only career.
Yeah, no, it's basically just the beginning, realistically. But what you do get, if everything does pan out in terms of being a professional athlete in esports or regular athletics, you do have an advantage in terms of skill development, right? You're gonna go through ups and downs. You're gonna go through a lot of different emotions that otherwise you wouldn't have it as at a regular job, right? Most people aren't gonna go through the amount of emotional stress that athletes do, and esports players do, in terms of the ups and downs of winning, losing, transfers, getting cut, benched, or getting signed. There's so many different things that happen. I think a lot of that helps you mature quicker in terms of skill development, growth as an adult, versus if you just have gone to school and got a job and that's it, right? You're not going to face as much adversity at a regular job as you would playing esports or sports.
No doubt. And yeah, probably one of the biggest things I look at that any person that's pursuing a passion like that, who puts that kind of effort and dedication into it, is the self-motivation. That motivation can be applied to anything in your life. And if you have that, you can succeed at many different things in your life. So I think that's one of the positives I see in that. You know what? Maybe we do have to balance a child's life. Sure, certainly you do. But as a parent, if we can harness that energy, positive, they'll do very well in life, regardless of where they end up.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, he had practiced so much to the point where, and again, it's a very small percentage of players get to this point. He got a contract from the biggest North American Counter-Strike team right now. And it was a three-month contract. It's rumored to be $50,000, but all of the expenses paid for. He's going to travel with the team. He's going to live at a house, doesn't have to pay any rent, and parents still don't support it. So he's gotten to the point where he's showed them, look, I have a job. I got a job at 18 years old. This is the contract. Still don't support it. So and one of the things with Stewie, he brought a very unique, aggressive play style that not a lot of people had seen before. So when he first got signed, he didn't receive a lot of credit. And he was criticized a lot for that aggressive play style. He thought that his play style was not conducive to one of a team play. It was more solo and individual skill rather. In fact, Thorin was quoted saying Thorin is an analyst for Counter-Strike. He was quoted saying that Cloud9 is not a better team with Stewie. I don't believe this is a good pickup, and he was known for his flashy individual play, was not known for his team play, and I know a lot of people want to see him fail. That's an analyst literally saying this when he was first signed. A lot of what critics had said came to fruition. So Cloud9 didn't really have any success off the start with him. But eventually they did see his potential as being the best player on the team, and he actually did become in-game leader. So they signed him at 3 months. He becomes their best player to the point where they're like, we want you to start calling the in-game strategies at 18 years old. And he's playing with guys who have been around for the last 4 or 5 years, and he's only been around for 3 months. With him in charge, they started to become one of the powerhouses in North America. And in their first season of ESL Pro League, they went 25-1, so only had 1 loss in their first round of Pro League with this new team, and with Stewie as the in-game leader. The ESL Season 4 was in Brazil, and their first accomplishment was them ending up winning that. And at that point, their roster was Stewie, Shroud, Automatic, Skadoodle, and Nothing. Nothing, I'll say, is the same age as me, and was one of the guys I used to play against in Cal I. So when we were growing up, he was in a lot of the events, the tournaments that I was playing in, and it's interesting to see. Hey, I mean, he didn't recently retire. He's now kind of stepped back. He's taken like an analytical perspective, but he's starting to start his life, like got engaged, etc. Like that stuff starts to happen when you're in your late 20s. You start to look at that. Like gaming takes a lot of your time. So just thought I'd throw that out there. It's kind of interesting. So
we'll have to tell your mother you could have been a pro.
I know. Well, who knows? I mean, I was playing against them. It never means that I could have gotten to the skill level or to the level that they've gotten to, right? So, so in the ESL Season 4 finals, they beat Optic, Mouse Sports, and SK Gaming. SK Gaming, for those who don't know, that's MIBR. That's the roster that was currently SK. Although they found success in Season 4 Pro League, they failed to find any more success beyond that, including any LAN events and online seasons. Stewie still thrived as an individual player, but still found their team lacked play. It also didn't help that SK Gaming was growing through their dominance leading up to 2017 Krakow Major in Poland, where Cloud9 failed to even advance to the quarterfinals. At this point, Cloud9 management decided to bench both Nothing and Shroud. Nothing, again, was my age, so he was going to be 27, 28. He did go on and continue to play. Shroud, it was probably Shroud's best career move ever because he became one of the biggest and well-known streamers in the world, and recently just signed that contract with Microsoft to go on Mixer. So it was actually probably his best career decision. Things happened, but what was for Shroud was that he had unbelievable aim. So that skill and aim translated well into other games. People liked watching that because he did some things that no one can do, and it just took off. His streaming career took off, and that's it. So really good decision for Shroud in his career, although the timing kind of sucked because Cloud9 ends up going to win the biggest major event in Counter-Strike that he could win, and he got benched. But anyways, continuing on. So at that point, after they bench Nothing and Shroud, they replace both of them with Tarek and Rush from Optic. Stewie said following the shakeup, I believe that the ceiling is much higher now than previously with Nothing and Shroud. I think we have more potential, we mesh better together, and our personalities don't clash. There wasn't any doubt that Stewie2k is a top professional player at this point. They saw quick success, but like early 2017 when SK was dominating the scene, FaZe decided to make their super roster with Rain, Guardian, Kerrigan, Nico, and Olofmeister, and quickly saw success. The same time that Cloud9 was starting to excel. They ended up losing to FaZe twice in LAN events, leading up to the Boston Major in 2017. FaZe entered the tournament as favorites, and Cloud9 was seen as North American favorites to go the furthest in the event. In fact, they ended up going 3-0 in the Swiss round robin, beating MB, Sprout, and Mouse Sports to qualify for the Boston Major. So the Swiss round robin, in case you don't know, it just means you win 3, you're in, you lose 3, you're out. That simple. So before the Boston Major, they have qualifiers. So they weren't qualified yet. They had to go to that event, qualify. They ended up doing that, going 3-0, and now they ended up at the Boston Major. So they made it to the Boston Major. However, they ended up going 0-2 to start off the event, which means that they had to go 3-0 to qualify for the playoffs. They beat Virtus Pro. They beat Astralis, which is now the best team in the world. They actually knocked Astralis out of the tournament, and they beat Vega Squadron. They were set to play G2 in the quarterfinals, and what is now being called the Stewie Show. After defeating G2, next was SK Gaming, now known as MIBR. They were considered the second best team in the world at that time. They ended up beating SK 2-1 and being matched up with the number 1 team at that time, FaZe, for the title of the world's best team, and for the major championship. So FaZe at that time was the best team in the world. They had only lost 1 map in the entire event, leading up to the finals against Cloud9, and every single analyst picked FaZe to win the matchup. FaZe did win the first map, 16-14, but Cloud9 showed some resilience in the fact that this wasn't going to be a pushover. The second map, Cloud9 defeated FaZe on their map choice, 16-10, to force it to a third and final map, which ended up going to overtime. I mean, fitting. They did end up winning and became the first ever North American Counter-Strike team to win a major championship. After the major, so now at this point, Stewie's parents started to see that, yeah, there is some light at the end of this tunnel, but his career now has been 3 years in this, and he's been playing professionally for a year and a half, seen success, he's got a professional contract, and now he just won the biggest event. It's $1 million tournament, and they won it. So first ever to do it too in North American history. So and still no one's won it since then. Still been EU teams. After the major, he decided to move on, join SK Gaming under the leadership of Brazilian legend Fallen, replacing Taco on their active lineup. After a period of 3 months, he was signed by MIBR, which stands for Made in Brazil, along with other players from SK Gaming. Following the months of up and down results, Stewie decided to return to North America and join Team Liquid, where they won the IEM Grand Slam and continued to be one of the top 3 teams in the world. This week, Stewie2k became the first North American player to earn $1 million or more, and currently sixth in Counter-Strike history for all-time earnings. What do his parents think now? Here's a quote from Stewie. Over time, when I was gone from home, they've seen the beauty of eSports. They've seen me on TBS, be successful on stage and raising trophies. So now, over the course of time, they've grown to support me and know that it's been a dream for me. Now, although this story is inspiring, we have to remember that not everyone has the same skill sets, and most that do try could suffer in the long run if things don't work out. I know we touched base on that previously, but again, it's a reminder that, yeah, it's a very unique story. It's a very inspirational story, but not everyone has the skill sets that some of these guys have. You do have to, you can practice and try your best to dedicate yourself at having better aim or better skills, but a lot of people are born with just better reaction time, better abilities to point and click faster than other people. So that in combination with a lot of practice and dedication can get you there, but at the same time, don't go all in. That's all. That would be my 2 cents on this. But additionally, if you do have a dream and if you are somewhat good and if you started to win, have the conversation with your parents. Be open about it. Don't hide it. It would just make things worse. If your parents aren't supportive of doing something like this, try to show them and understand them, educate them, and say, look, this is what I've done. Show them what you've done. Make a plan. Say, this is what I want to do. I want to practice, say, 2 hours. I'll wake up early, practice 1 hour in the morning, and when I get home after my homework is all done, I want to spend 1.5 hours or 2 hours to play and practice, and that's it. You can cut me off, and that's my time. That gives you a solid 3 hours, and show them the events. Show the events that you're going to be playing in. This, Fortnite, Counter-Strike. There's so many opportunities now. Just be up and honest with your parents and show them the potential that you may have in being an esport professional. And I have to say, if you're going to do it, do it. That's the other thing too. You got to make sure you dedicate yourself. Don't say that you're going to spend 3 hours and don't. Make sure that you are putting time in. there are coaches out there. There are eSport coaches that you can hire to help you hone your skills. And I know a lot of parents that are that see the potential in that are hiring these coaches, right? They're seeing it and making sure that they stay strict with their routines. Because with gamers, like I said, time can kind of just float away. You can really lose track of time. Nutrition is so important, to stay healthy. A lot of these kids, 15, 16 years old, your brain is still developing. Like your brain continues to develop up until you're 25, 26. Nutrition plays a very important part in that. So you can't always just be in front of a screen. You have to make sure you exercise. You have to make sure you have a good, healthy diet, and make sure that you balance everything in your life and not just 100% towards one thing. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I agree. Certainly, and sleep is another very important aspect of your life, and it's not just because you should be sleeping. It's also it impacts your gameplay as well, I would think. But it was interesting, kind of going back, and I think you said, was it Shroud that ended
Shroud.
up? Think about that. He's now making a career, a better paying career in esports, not being a professional player.
It's in esports, not really. Right, he's at this point now. He's become an entertainer.
But it's still part of the esports industry.
Yep.
And without, I would think, without the ability to be an orator, to carry on a conversation, to have that kind of the ability to do that, which you get from schooling, he probably would not have been able to do that. I don't know anything about his background. I could be wrong.
He's actually Canadian. He's from Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I would think that, just even looking at that, and I'll tell you probably a good analogy. Mark's younger sister is pursuing a career as an artist, a singer-songwriter. And she went off and moved off to Nashville, and she's doing her thing. When you get down there, you learn that this industry is much bigger than just being a singer-songwriter. And you can have a huge career not being a performer. But without the proper skills, credentials, training, those wouldn't be open to you. So being able to be in the industry is not necessarily being just a professional player. And that might only be for a year or two, even if you make it. But certainly the ability to continue on in that industry is, I think, that having a good education and balancing your life will lead to those other opportunities than if you were just narrowly looking at improving your skills as a player.
Yeah. So in closing, is there anything, I know I kind of said my little thing, but is there anything that you would direct yourself? I kind of directed myself towards the players in general. Is there anything that you would say to parents, or have any advice to parents if they have their kids that are interested or are excelling in esports or just athletics in general? What would be your advice?
Well, as a parent, I think that my advice would be that understand what it is that your child has a passion about. Understand that it's really important to them, or they wouldn't be doing this, and help them, like, be part of it, as opposed to saying, no, you can't do that, or you have to go to school. Help them understand it, be a part of their career. And so, in Stewie's case, as a parent, I would have said, okay, this is something you want to pursue. We're going to help you do this. And that might be getting coaching. That might be by showing that you want to participate, you have a better chance of them balancing their life, because you're going to help them do it. As a 15, 16-year-old, I don't think it's fair to just expect them. They have this passion, this dream, and they believe that's it. I'm going to pursue that and only that. They don't have the ability to see kind of the broader picture. As a parent, I highly recommend the parents get involved, understand what it is they have a passion about. Look at the sport, even if it's not about making a gazillion dollars in their career. This is something they want to do. It's a goal. It's an aspiration. Embrace it. Channel that as a positive as opposed to a negative. Channel that energy that, it's a reward that, is if you're going to, as you said, put your 3 hours budget a day to improving your skill sets, we're also going to help you do that. What do you need to help you do that? But that's a reward for also ensuring that you go to school, that, these other opportunities, career opportunities, are there for you in the industry as well. And look, to me as a parent, I would look at it as a positive. If my child wants to excel at anything, as long as it's not illegal, that I would certainly want to support it, because I think any time a child shows that kind of passion and motivation towards anything, this is only a positive. And so help them build on it. I believe being part of it would have solved that. And I never, I grew up kind of old school. My father was old school immigrant, and it was like, I'm going to tell you how you're going to live your life because I know better. I don't think that works, particularly in today's day. But even as when I was growing up, I didn't see it that way. I had my own dreams, my own aspirations. They weren't my parents'. Every parent wants their kid to be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's just not going to happen. And so, as a parent, I think you if you embrace it and be part of their life, no different than if it were hockey, how you bring them to practices in the morning, how you make sure they're on time, all that as being part of it, you can be part of this as well. And I don't know, you tell me, do you think that's a positive way for someone to approach it as a parent? You're both now a parent, and having grown up as an athlete. As
a parent, you've been through that period of that life that they're in, right? And you've got more years of experience than they have. So a lot of the life experience that you've acquired, in my opinion, should be shared with your kids. So some of the things that maybe you would have done differently, or you have a similar story, share it, right? So for example, with Stewie's parents, maybe he was trying to be, I don't know, maybe his dad was trying to become a chess player, say something like that, and he failed at it. So he could say, look, son, this is one of the reasons why I don't support it. I had a similar situation. This is how much time I dedicated. However, understand and I'm referring to Stewie's father, just because you failed, take that and understand, okay, how can I take my experience? This is a passion of his, and he's just as passionate with Counter-Strike that I may have been with chess. How can I, provide some expertise and some knowledgeable insights on how I failed, and maybe I should have changed some of my life routines around, and provide that to your kids, rather than just saying, no, do this, do that, I don't support it. But again, I think we're starting to see the trend of that going away. But there will be a lot of parents that say, no, you're not playing a video game. That's stupid. What are you going to do? You're going to pay the bills with that? And that's where it comes it should be I would guess, a healthy negotiation between parent and child, and coming up with a good compromise that doesn't see any sort of high risk, high reward type of situation with a child, right? It should be, this is what our plans are going to be, and spend this. You're going to go to school, spend this much time with your homework. However, I'm going to allow you to spend this much time with your skill development in whatever game or whatever your passion is. And I think not only just allow you, how can I help you? Yeah. Because I think getting that interaction with your child gives them buy-in. It gives them confirmation that, okay, you know what? Everybody, I believe most people want their parents to be proud of what they're doing. And you can even see in Stewie's reaction, even after all of this, he easily could have said, well, that's it. I'm done. And kind of alienate yourself from your parents. But, I think you want to prove to your parents that you want to accomplish. And when you are successful at an accomplishment, you'd like to get their support for it. And if you can support your child right from the beginning, I really believe you can also help them balance their life and pursue it, be part of it. I think most 99% of the time, you'll be very successful at it, at getting them to go to school and balance their life. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that, for the insights and joining us. And I hope if you listen to this, there's a good balance in what you can take away from, whether it be the story that Stewie shared with everyone and how inspirational it is, but I hope you can take away what we dissected from it and what you can learn from it, and how you can, to kind of move on in whatever career and aspirations that you may have, and as a parent, how you can support your kids, to ensure that they are doing everything with a healthy goal in mind. So, again, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
Are you a gamer looking for something more than just playing? Introducing Elite Duels. the world's first skill-based daily fantasy esports platform that allows you to make your own fantasy esport team, cheer your favorite professional gamer, earn fantasy points, and win real cash. You can choose and enter a contest for games like Fortnite, CSGO, Rocket League, and Rainbow Six Siege. Simply enter a contest, select 5 players, one from each tier to fill out your fantasy team, and start cheering. Sounds amazing, right? Visit www.eliteduels.com and start drafting.